Okay, so last session before lunch. So this session's starting now at 12:20 and we'll finish at 12:50, where we'll go downstairs to the marketplace and have lunch and regroup back up here at about, literally say just after 1:30, because at 1:40 we're starting our masterclass with Mark and Henry. So I want you to be on time for that. So it's now very much my pleasure to welcome Derek Grantham, John Botica and Michael Hewes from the FMA. I know that they are welcoming of questions. So John said they've been to various locations and sometimes they have lots of questions and sometimes there's not a lot. But this is your chance to ask the regulator any questions. I know they've got a few things that they want to get across and Derek's going to run the show. But as I say, please bring those questions forward. So gentlemen, the stage is yours.
Well, good afternoon. Transformational. That's a word that I hear an awful lot, particularly when I speak to financial advice firms about what full licensing has meant to their business. And when they compare their business to the way it was to the way it is now, they say the change is significant. And they can point to new tools, they can point to new ways of thinking, and they can point to new ways of doing. And it's that transformational aspect of licensing that I want to talk to John and Michael about today. And to do that, I think, to put things in the proper context, I need to think about where the sector has been, where it is now, and where it's going. So if we go back to the Financial Advisor Act, to that world, it was a time when you would have said that you were not operating in a fit-for-purpose regulatory environment. You said there were things that were working well, but there were also some things that needed to change. And during that time and since, of course, the emphasis has been on designing and implementing the new regime, and your focus has been on working out how this new regime is going to work for you, your business and your clients, and you've done that through a very difficult period of time. And it's at that point that I really want to pick up the conversation with John. So John, you and I have been out talking to lots of financial advisors, lots of groups, and one of the things I've observed is that those firms that have got their full licence seem really positive and really buoyant, and I'm sort of speaking very generally, but that's not everybody in the room. Not everybody's in that position, not everybody is feeling that way. So John, what are we hearing from the market and what is your key message for firms? Thank you.
Mai haere mai, lovely to be here. I think I'm the first to say the regulator takes a stand and the sun decides to shine outside. Thank you. I could tell you stories actually about the rough trip that we had in or whatever, or the one last week into Wellington where we were waiting to board the flight and on our phones Air New Zealand saying disruptive weather, you're allowed to change flights in the next 48 hours free of charge. Got on board and the flight deck comes in. Those of you who are used to flying into Wellington will now know what to expect. Sort of thing, and then behind me I had a person who kept rocking my seat all the way through, and I'm going, rah. So when I stood up in the end to get off to have a look and I turned around, it was Jacinda, so I decided I should just behave myself. Anyway, we've heard this morning, and as Derek said, a lot of the conversations we've been having talking to various groups of advisors, that the walls are closing in. So we've heard all about what's happening economically, the increase in client care that a lot of advisors are putting in. It's all about change, and it's all about change in regulation, and all these things are adding up to stress. But the one thing that I think is really important is when I have a look at what I call the waterfront of financial services. So not so much the pieces about the value chain and unlocking those bits, but it's more around everyone, all of us that actually need to work together right across that waterfront. And, that's talking about product providers, it's talking about us as regulators, it's talking about financial advisors and everyone else that is actually part of that waterfront. But the one thing is that the most important player across that whole waterfront is actually the financial advisor when it comes down to it. So I look at that and I go, we are midstream through transition. We have 9 months left in which everyone needs to have their full licence. So where are we at so far? So 30% of current advisors or financial advice providers actually have their full licence, or in the process they have actually applied for their licence. So that's 30%. Another 20% have gone on to the FSPR and have applied for the service of a full licence, but are yet to apply for their full licence. So that leaves us 50%. So that's half of current advisors or financial advice providers in this market that we do not know where they are in their journey around applying for a full licence. And the other piece is, I think there's about 9,000 or so registered financial advisors on the FSPR. So we've had no material changes in this period of numbers of advisors, nor material changes in numbers of financial advice providers, as we're moving through the transitional sort of period. So my question really is, particularly with 50%, is what can we do to help? And that is a we, not just us, the regulator. But what I can tell you is there will be no rollback of the regulations. So 15th of March 2023 is hard-coded. If you do not have a full licence, you can no longer provide advice. What I will say, however, is I truly believe in financial advice, and I truly want all financial advisors to be successful, because financial advisors change people's lives. And I know in my own story, and some of you may have heard it before, some years ago when I said to my wife, I think we need to have a financial advisor to help us, she turned around and said to me, but you'll know more than she does. And it's a little bit like the story that says, you know, the painter who has the only house in the street that needs a paint job. And so my journey in getting financial advice has been really successful, and we achieved all of our goals and things that we wanted to do much, much earlier than we would have with us just doing it on our own. And that's really important to everyone. And I also think we are in quite a magic sort of time at the moment around the changes that are in front of us and where we're sitting with this absolute need, you know, for financial advice. And sitting there as well to go, let's beat the bots. So whatever people are starting to talk about where robo might start to fit in, or what that change is going to look like, how long it will take to get here, because we're not seeing a lot of evidence of it making a large change through today. So now is a sweet spot that sort of comes through. So it's all those advisors and the things that we've heard this morning around, you know, building really good businesses and the client care and everything that sort of comes into it. I really, really want those advisors who are still sitting on the fence and not quite sure what they're going to do next to actually make really informed and proper decisions around what their future is going to be. And applying for a full licence isn't a walk in the park. It's not like what a transitional licence was. I make no apology for that, because getting your full licence and getting behind yourself and really having a professional and properly run business has benefits for everybody when it comes down to it. So my team at the moment are also spending quite a lot of time in out calling. So we're actually calling advisors to ask them if they need any help or what it is that, you know, we might be able to do. So I'd have said that 20% that are sort of on that gate, sort of at the moment, which is around 400. We've rung every single one of those 400 advisors to see what else they need. And most actually have probably come back to say, you know, the things that you have on your website and the forms and the guides and things you have are actually really, really helpful for us to do, but it only takes us part way through the journey. The other bit is, Mr. Regulator, you can't actually give us any advice or help us make business decisions around things. So that's where it comes down into forums like this, and when I come back to it, that it says it's a we. So it's about talking to us, it's about talking to product providers, it's about talking to professional bodies, but importantly, it's actually talking to other financial advisors who already have gone through the licensing process, and they're just an amazing source of information because everyone has been through it, everyone is feeling the stress, and there are lots of really, really good ideas that come just from talking to other advisors. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you, John. I'm still trying to get over that thought that you've actually achieved all your goals. I so need to talk to your financial advisor. Hey, one of the things, just while you're there, I wanted to ask you about was when we've been out talking to financial advisors, there's always been at least one or two really courageous, bold advisors prepared to stand up in the room and actually share with everybody a little bit about the stress and the workloads and the impact that that's been having. And it's been really a fascinating conversation right across the country so far. And one of the things that I've really noticed is that the best support comes from within. Comes from within the sector. And John, I wonder if you care to comment a little bit about what that experience has been like.
Yeah, absolutely right, Derek. It was the first time, because we're currently just sort of going around the country on sort of various sessions and talking to advisors, and it was sort of 3-4 weeks ago. I think we were in Nelson, and one advisor, just had the courage and stood up and spoke from the heart about how really, really difficult it is in this current environment. All the things that we've been speaking about sort of this morning, and just finding the time to look at what they need to do to get their licence, and frankly saying that a lot of these things, documenting procedures and things, that it's actually really dull. It's quite boring, and we've heard about that this morning as well. It's not the stuff that gets us out every morning to want to go and sort of do stuff, but it's just so very important. How it is after 20, 30 years experience in the industry that you have to go back and study to do a level 5, and frankly saying that the study seemed irrelevant to what they're doing sort of off their desk sort of thing as well. But it's what it is, and it says around the sort of the competence sort of levels. How do I do that? How at the same time do I actually I spend more of my time looking after my clients to do that, and where do I find the time to actually start to look for new clients to build revenue for the future? How do I start to look towards the horizon around how it is that I want to start to build that strategy around where I want to take my business in the future? These are small businesses, so single advisors as well. The succession plan sort of thing as well. Where does that fit in? It's all these things kind of flying all the way around, in their minds. But and then others in the room said, "Yeah, that happened to me as well, and this is what my approach was, and this is how I did it. I found someone to help me write those procedures that I didn't like doing when it came down to it." Someone else talked about. I put aside 2 to 3 hours one day a week, so every Wednesday or whatever it is, and I did nothing but work on my licence application in that time. I didn't answer emails or the phone, whatever. I just, carried on. I had a plan and what I needed to do. And, some of those things that I thought were really difficult to do, I got there much faster than I thought. And so that also then sort of started the confidence around these things. I can actually do this. And as I said before, it's not a walk in the park, but we've also set it at such a place that we didn't want to set licensing at such a high hurdle to knock advisors out of the market. So we've tried to do it in such a way that's balanced, and as I said, that enables people to make really good decisions.
Thank you, John. And I have to agree. I mean, some of these conversations have been incredibly powerful. And I guess part of the focus, over the last few years has been on firms building these stronger, robust, resilient businesses. But along the way, we have to also remember that people want to feel like they can thrive as well. And so just, a cautionary note, I think, in terms of what we're seeing. So now I want to sort of change tacks a little bit. So all the firms that have gone through the licensing process now have this wonderful suite of documented processes and procedures and so on. Transformational or not, I think it's absolutely foundational to that work that's been done. But first things first, Michael, as head of the financial advice team that supervises financial advice providers, you have an important role in firms meeting their obligations. And I think that brings us right back to policies and to procedures. And getting that right is the first step, I think, into being able to operate in an optimal way as a financial advice business. And so I really wanted to ask you, is that your focus And how will you go about your monitoring function, Michael?
Wonderful. Well, kia ora koutou, and thanks, Derek. I think there's a word that you use, and it's called foundational. And policies and procedures are truly foundational. Look, I guess we're going to turn the clock back and have a look at the previous regime, the financial advisors regime. A lot of insights, there's a lot of reports, and I'd certainly encourage everyone to have a look at our website. There were some supervisory reports that we produced several years ago, and they provide, I guess, a wee bit of a look into what our expectations are as a regulator. So please, I would encourage you to have a look at those. Look, with policies and procedures, they've got to come from your pen, really critical, and that's what my team look at. They'll walk into a business, step back. We won't walk into a business, we'll contact you first, we'll make an appropriate time, there's a date, there's none of this nonsense of us knocking on the door at 6 a.m. in the morning. We work very collegiately and very collaboratively with our licence holders. And it's important that we actually go through and agree on that right time and date and have the right people there, because honestly, none of us will get anything out of it, right?
You're never awake at 6 a.m. in the morning?
No. Unless I'm having to share a room with you, Derek, as is government policy to keep costs down, because, you all fund us at the end of the day. Look, the policies and procedures, it's your mahi, it's your work that you actually go through and put in. There are a lot of guidelines there. There's a lot of work that we've put on our website as well. Please have a look through those. But the team will actually ask you to talk through your policies, procedures. I'd like you to actually articulate them. I'd like you to go through and have there's that narrative with us to actually explain what it means, what do you do. And it's really, really critical you actually understand those. I mean, too often that we've gone into firms where we've undertaken monitoring, and a big document has come out. There's our procedure on, say, record keeping as an example, and no one's actually understood it. No one's been able to articulate it. So, example being making sure that if you write it, you understand it, and you can actually put it into process and actually do that work.
Thank you, Michael. As punishment for that cheeky comment, I'm going to turn the tables on you now. So I suppose the relationship that we have with the market is really important to us, Michael, and we make sure that the market understands our expectations of firms, that we're very clear about that. But what can firms expect from you going forward and from your team?
Yeah, okay. Look, we've spent a lot of time with the market and doing market engagement. I guess it's been the last close to 6 years of my life at the FMA. It's events such as this. It's events with fans. It's the individual meetings that we have, and we will upwards have up to 10 to 15 market engagements or industry participatory events every week. So what we do is we will help you. There's a lot of information sheets that we've released on our website. Only a couple of weeks ago, we released a new information sheet or guidance on record keeping for financial advice providers. If you haven't seen it, please have a look through it. Standard condition number 1. This is one of the big areas of challenge that we actually have when we go through and undertake monitoring. So again, it's making sure that we release information that's bite-sized, it's easily digestible, you can read it and you can understand it and understand what our expectations are. Look, harking back to an earlier comment, if you are selected for monitoring, and we undertake monitoring on 2 counts. One, it's reactive, so it's a complaint that's been lodged by the person sitting next to you on your practice, or through something such as maybe more of a thematic sort of basis, whereby we want to actually understand industry a wee bit more. We'll always find the right time. We'll come in, we'll undertake our monitoring. It could be anywhere from half a day through to a couple of days, depending on your licence class. But what's really, really critical with this is before we leave your office, we'll have a debrief with you. Within the next 10 days, you will receive a letter from us, and that letter will go through and list our observations, right? And that's an opportunity where we work collaboratively with you to go through and make sure that we get you up to spec, right? So very early in this regime, and we acknowledge that it's going to be challenging for a lot of people. It's going to be difficult for a lot of people. So our undertaking is, and now a big but here, unless you are a recidivist offender, we will make sure that we get you up to speed and we help you. sincerely, the last thing that we want is an industry that's not able to go through and perform and work within the standard conditions and ambit of your licence. And of course, that said, having applied for a licence through John and his team, we'll actually ask to see the documents. So please make sure when you've attested and signed that you have the documents, they are actually there for us to look at.
Thanks, Michael. Are you able to say just a few words about a monitoring visit in terms of what makes it go really well?
Yeah, look, what makes it go well, make sure you're prepared, turn up on the day. It's really critical. We'd like to see you because we will come back. It's just about being transparent and honest. So have your records and your databases available, have them open. Look, you don't need to put on a big morning tea for us at all. It doesn't help at all. We don't accept any sort of gifts of any sort of form of nature whatsoever. But it's just about being transparent and being honest and having those communications with us. So typically, my team, there might be 4 or so in the team, and they'll talk to you, they'll talk to any of your support staff, and it's about having those conversations and just actually understanding that you're meeting those requirements of licence. And as I said, we'll always send that feedback letter and we'll work with you. There's gaps and areas. These are the things that you need to focus on, right?
Thank you, Michael. So I now want to sort of change a little bit and talk about the consumer, because that's something that's fundamentally important to us and consumer outcomes. And so I really want to tease this out with both John and Michael. So I recently read in a report, and I'll give you this quote: "The last best experience that anyone has anywhere becomes the minimum expectation for the experience they want everywhere." And I think that is so incredibly true. And as a consumer, not just of financial services myself, with the access of so much information online, it's eaten away that information asymmetry. And I feel today way more equipped than ever before to really question and to challenge the people that are giving me advice. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that feeling. And as a consumer, we become much more savvy. Someone called me the other day a militant consumer, but it's not really quite the case. It's the case that when things are important, when they matter to me, I'm much more knowledgeable and I'm much better informed than I ever have been before, simply because of the access to information. And at the same time, firms are searching for ways to spend more time with clients. They're trying to improve client satisfaction and improve client engagement and communication. So John and Michael, and perhaps I'll start with you, John, first. I'm really interested in your thoughts on whether firms can do more to keep pace with changing client expectations.
Thanks, Derek. Actually, couple little. It's not working. Right, thanks. Couple of little stories that have happened to me recently, and probably a couple of months ago, I got an email from my health insurance provider letting me know what the premium was for the next year. And as I'm sailing very quickly through my 60s, I opened this email and expressed an expletive as to how much the premium, nearly sort of have a heart attack. And not dissimilar to Tony over here, who pays his kids' phone bills. I still pay for the insurance for my 28-year-old daughter. No idea why, but anyway. So I looked at all of this and went, crikey. And so I got in touch with the provider, and they were saying, oh, well, perhaps you could change to this sort of other policy, but if you have precondition, any medical conditions, sort of warning, or perhaps you could look at increasing the excess. And they said, oh, by the way, why don't you talk to your financial advisor? He'll be able to help you through that. And I went, oh yeah, I forgot actually that someone was attached to that policy, because I haven't heard from him for about 10 years. So I emailed him, and I actually got a response within about an hour. Yeah, great, John. How you going? How's the family? Blah blah blah. I'll be back in touch with you as soon as possible on the query. 3 days later, I got another email that said, hi. I'm actually not prepared to do the work that is going to tell you the differences between the policy that they've suggested and your current one, and I fully understand if you'd like to change advisors. So my wife says to me, he does know where you work, doesn't he? So I don't think I need to tell you the rest of that story. But it astounded me that honestly we still have advisors in this environment out there that essentially are riding the trails and doing absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. So I've experienced it firsthand and how angry that made me feel, for lots of things, and not because who I am, just how wrong that is. The other thing recently was I had a call from one of the fund managers who said to me, "Hey John, we'd quite like you to, would you answer, a survey about service? We've picked our high net worth individuals." So first of all, I said, "Well, you must change your definition of that one because in my day I can't see how I'm anywhere close to that. But anyway, yeah, sure, I'll do the survey." And it's actually a really interesting time to reflect a little bit on. And this is, well-known fund manager, great team of people. And they produce some really good information and fact sheets about what they do and who they are. But it really made me think a little bit more that sort of said, to what degree was that actually personalised? So how did it actually connect to me and what I'm doing, and what are some of the things that they could do to actually change that experience? So we sort of talked about a few things around sort of what that might be, including things like we understand, performance ain't that hot at the moment, and they can tell you your performance is X, but it doesn't really relate to an awful lot when you just get a fact sheet about the fund. So it didn't take sort of too much to sort of think around how you can sort of ratchet up that client care piece, that comes through. And I know some of these things aren't scalable and they're not sort of for smaller advice businesses, but the bigger end around some of the things that you could actually start to do. It made me think of another fund manager who sends me information on Sundays, which I can say are rainy Sundays because it always rains in Auckland on a Sunday, and just some interesting things to read around the market, not necessarily to do with what the fund manager is doing themselves, but just the sorts of things that are interesting reads right across this market and interesting articles that pique your interest. And all it does, it keeps your mind a little bit more active and you're tuned into some of the things that you're doing. And that sort of made me think more about that, actual financial advice as well, that says it is just finding that time that says, I need to know who my client is. And that came up sort of this morning as well around the CRMs and databases and things like that. It actually doesn't take that much to truly personalise into talking to the person and actually understanding something about them as well. And I just think that stuff's gold.
Thank you, John. Michael, it might be a difficult task. Can you tell a better story?
Well, I'm just about to ask John who the advisor is because it's, I've got my list starting out now. But, it's important, if you think about the regulatory model that operates in New Zealand, so the Twin Peak model, so Reserve Bank is your prudential regulator and the FMA is a conduct regulator. And I guess, from the 2019 life insurance conduct and culture review that we undertook, one of the things that we implemented and started the Kofi ball rolling, which is a different discussion, was we actually toured back through the country and talked to directors, we talked to the C-suite, and we shared with them what some of the good examples that we'd actually seen within the businesses. And I guess, Derek, if there's one thing I reflect from an FMA perspective that we need to do more of, and we will do more of, is that when we visit practices and licensed holders with their permission, we will share some of those good news stories, because there is a lot of great stuff that's happening in advisor land, a lot of really unique things that I think would really benefit broader consumers. So certainly if you've listened to our new CEO speak, Samantha, she has really centred herself on consumer outcomes and us being a true conduct regulator.
Thanks, Michael and John. So really just to conclude this session, I think what we've heard today is becoming fully licensed can make a big difference to your business. And so for those of you that are not quite there yet, the message is clear today. Please get on and get it done now. What lies ahead, I think, simply put, the challenge is to remain in sync, both with the people that serve you and also those that you serve. So thank you very much for your time. And thank you, John and Michael.
Thank you. Derek.
Thank you, John, Derek and Michael. Interesting, 50%, still a fair way to go. So I know that you are coming to Christchurch and Dunedin in the next couple of weeks. So I guess if any of us in the room are in any of those locations, I'd encourage you to go along and attend. I wanted to finish by just saying I read a report recently, and I've talked about this report publicly before, from Russell Investments, which was a 2019 report, and it does a deep dive on the value of an advisor. And the value that they came out that an advisor adds is 5.2% per annum. So, I mean, that probably, sits probably more on the investment side of things, but that's 2019. So don't underestimate the value each of you offer to your clients. And hopefully this morning's session has kind of reinvigorated your thinking on that this is a fabulous industry to be part of. You're fabulous people in the work that you do. Our investors, our people that are underinsured, our people that are looking for loans and maybe using KiwiSaver to get on that first home ladder need us more than ever now. This is what we get paid for, and the fact that you've put your hands in your pockets and come here today is testament to the great work that you do. So a round of applause again for the regulator, and then I'm just going to hand over to Richard, but thank you.
Thank you, gents. I'll be really brief. Working closely with all our regulatory partners is kind of critical for all of us. And I think, as the gents pointed out, they've been on this journey for the last 5 years. So we're not at the end yet. We're almost at the new beginning. So, gents, thank you to all of the FMA teams and to you guys in particular who are kind of leading the charge. Folks, that last session, the Meet the Professionals, one of my favourite sessions in general because it was raw, it was organic, and it was kind of just in the round. There weren't flash presentations, it wasn't rehearsed, it was just a conversation. So I just wanted to acknowledge and thank all of the people who put a whole bunch of work in. Some of them are still in the room, some of them are not in the room. If you're still in the room and you were one of the facilitators, we have a little something for you. But on behalf of all of us here, thank you for sharing your expertise and your insights and your professional wisdom. And on behalf of all of us here and for those on the other end of the tally, a big round of applause. Thank you.